Hello, Mary Poplin here with Imagineer Systems. I'm the LA-based product specialist, and today I'll be going over how to create your own sort of fantasy look on any sort of film you're working on. Now, what I have here is a before and after shot of a friend of mine, Liz, and I'm going to try to turn her into a picture-perfect elf. Now, we've already done her ears and prosthetics, but she needs to look perfect and glowing, and unfortunately that's a hard look to get on a DSLR in broad daylight. You can see in the before and afters we've got a pretty big difference between the two looks, and I'm going to show you exactly how we got from start to finish in this shot. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that our settings all match. We just go to File, New, and then check our settings. We scrub through our file to make sure everything looks good. Now I'm going to use my zoom tool and select an X-spline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing a remove on the blemishes on her face and neck. Okay? Now this assumes that you have watched some of my previous demos about removes, so we're going to speed through this section. If you have not watched one of Imagineer Systems' tutorials on the remove tool, I highly suggest that you go back and watch that before you watch this. Now what we're doing here is we're going in and we are tracking the background areas that Mocha is going to use to replace these moles and other blemishes on her face and neck. So I'm tracking the left side of her neck, I'm tracking her chest, and then I'm moving in towards her face, and I'm tracking the lower parts of her face on specific planes where I need to remove blemishes on her face. Now I'm naming everything correctly, and when I cannot get good tracking data from translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective, I move on to just tracking translation, scale, and rotation, or translation, scale, rotation, and shear. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make roto shapes around the various blemishes that I want to remove on her face. It's very quick work, so obviously I've sped everything up. Now I'm using X-splines, and what I will be doing is I will be singling all of these little pieces out that I want to clean up, and I'm going to link them to the tracks that I made of the background area. So I'm linking that to the left side of her neck, I'm linking the right cheek to the right chin cleanup, I'm linking the left blemishes to the chin cleanup area that I tracked, and I linked the bottom mole to the chest track that I did. Okay? And link to track is always found in the layer properties box under your layer controls by default. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my project because I like to save often and I like to save in versions. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the Remove tab. Now this is where things start to get interesting. I have to have a clean plate in order to get a remove on these blemishes. So I create a clean plate in Mocha and I load that over into Adobe Photoshop by going to File, Open, and I load up a clean plate here. So I select the clean plate that Mocha made for me, and in Photoshop I very quickly do a little heel tool remove on the blemishes that I would like to remove. So I select an area of texture using Alt, and then I go ahead and wipe that texture with the heel tool over the areas that I want to remove. And very quickly I can remove small blemishes or even entire beauty marks without any real problem very quickly in Photoshop. When I'm done, I just go ahead and hit Control-S to save, and that will automatically be loaded back into Mocha when I go back to Mocha Pro. Now the remove is only available in Mocha Pro, but it's a definite good reason to upgrade, and here's why. I'm going to turn off the gears that I'm on the layers that I'm not trying to remove, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to load in my clean plate on frame 1 of every single layer that I need to do my mole and blemish removals on. So I'm just going to select each one of them individually and keep loading in my clean plates, and I make sure that I change the frame to frame 1 because that's where I took the clean plate from originally. If I don't put it back in at frame 1, it will be offset by however many frames I'm off by. And then all I do is I come in here and I adjust my settings, so I'm going to use a linear illumination modeling for all of my blemish removals because Mocha will try to match the colors just like the heel tool does in Photoshop for the entire shot. And then I'm going to use clean plates exclusively on every single layer that I'm trying to remove because Mocha can't see behind the blemishes and I don't want to replace blemish with blemish. So I'm just going to go ahead and render forward, and I've sped this up so that you can see exactly how this is removing. This whole remove probably took about 10 minutes, which is faster than I could have painted it. Alright, so now all I do is I come in here and I check and make sure that my renders have rendered correctly and I don't have any sort of weird blotches in the remove. I'm going to go ahead and save, and now we're going to move on to phase 2. So I really need to soften her skin in order to get that sort of Galadriel elven look that the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit has, okay? And that's sort of what we're going for here. We're going for like a very Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings kind of style. So I'm going to make roto shapes for her cheeks and for her chin. Now, I am actually doing something that I tell you guys not to do when you're doing real roto, but this is a garbage mat for blur, so I am tracking and rotoing at the same time. Now, you really shouldn't do that if you have to do really, really precise work, but for beauty work where you're just trying to soften up skin and stuff like that, you can go ahead and do garbage mats. You just need to make sure that your shapes aren't going to go over any sort of dark area of high detail, because what we're going to do is we're going to do some overlay tricks. We don't want to muddy that detail. So I'm going to check and make sure that that roto shape looks good, and then I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of doing the rest of the shapes on her face. So, and you can tell, as usual, I'm going in and I'm trying to name everything really consistently, so if I come back to this project in 3 weeks, I'll know what shapes I did and why, or if I have to pass this off to another person, they won't, come by my desk and murder me. So, right here we're doing her forehead, and you'll notice that I've hit the stabilize button on. I've hit the stabilize button on because it's really easy to roto with the stabilize button on. It sort of focuses on your shape doesn't go off screen, and you can go ahead and get real in there and start moving data around quickly. Well, moving points around quickly. So I'm going to do the same thing on her cheek, and I'm going to try to get the lower bit of her eye there because her eye is a little puffier on that side than it is on the other side. I'm going to come in and I'm going to move this roto shape actually around her nose because, again, I don't want to damage the hard line that is separating her nose from her cheek when I do my blur overlay to soften her face. And all we do is come in here and clean up roto, and then we move on to the chin area. So with this chin area and mouth area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the area under her nose, because again, I want to soften any sort of pores, any sort of thing that makes her look human. We're going to move towards making her unearthly. Now, the last thing I need to get is her neck and chin. So I'm going to go ahead and check and see what I've got so far and see if I need to make any major adjustments. And it looks like I could do a little bit more around her mouth, but I'll probably get to that later. So I'm going to draw under her chin here. And I'm using X-splines, and I know I've said it in the past, but I really like X-splines because they're very, very quick for getting the kinds of shapes you want in a very fast amount of time. So with that, it doesn't look like there's too much correction that needs to be done. I need to pull the shape a little bit away from her lips. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to pull some of those points away from her lips. And I'm going to do some corrections on the other shapes of her face. But first we're going to pull this away from her mouth. Alright, that looks good to me. So what we're going to do is, like I said before, we're going to come in here and we're going to draw a shape around her neck because we want to soften those lines in her neck and make everything look more smooth. And we want to even out those bumps that are her pores on her skin, because that's way too mortal. We need unearthly. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to track and roto for this like I've done with every other shape, and then I'm going to save. I know I keep saying it, but saving is important. Now I'm going to go ahead and unlock all of the layers that I would like to export, and I'm going to go ahead and hide all the ones I don't need from my remove. And now I'm going to take these layers and I'm going to do any sort of final adjustments I need to do on top of everything. In this case, I'm going to zoom in and sort of make sure that this mouth shape isn't pulling towards her nose or nostrils so that we don't lose the depth there. And you can see that I use the Uber key there. Now the Uber key is like a ripple edit, and so you can see the results over time as it changes those points for the entirety of the shot, not just one frame. So now we're just about ready to export to After Effects. So I'm going to go ahead and load After Effects up, and this is where we start to get into the fun sort of compositing in After Effects part. So we're going to feed all of our shapes from Mocha Pro into After Effects. Now, you could also use Mocha for After Effects for these shapes, but you wouldn't be able to use the Remove tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to import our original file. We're just going to go over and just pull it right in. We're going to check and make sure that it's 2997, and it is. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to import our cleanplate that we made, our remove that we made, and we are going to load that right in. We're going to interpret that footage. It's very important that we go to Interpret Footage and Main, and that we make sure that instead of 30 frames per second, it's 2997, because that is the frame rate of the composite and the frame rate that we tracked in Mocha. Now, you can see the color changes a little bit. That's because of my settings in Mocha. I had let the file darken. If I wanted, I could go back and color correct and re-render out of Mocha, but I'm actually going to darken the whole shot, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and rename my layers right quick, and I'm going to make a layer that's going to be blurred. Okay, so I'm going to call this Cheek Fix, or no, I'm actually going to call it Smooth Skin. And I'm going to go over to Mocha Pro. I'm going to select on a layer, and I'm going to, in my Track tab, go to Export Shape Data. I'm going to export Mocha Shape Data for After Effects, and I'm going to select all visible layers and copy it to the clipboard. I go back over to After Effects, I make sure I'm on the first frame, I make sure I'm on the layer that I want to paste in on, and I go to Edit Paste Mocha Mask. I now end up with a broad range of masks that I have tracked in Mocha. Now, I can select all of them, and I can adjust the feathering on them all in After Effects very quickly. And then I can start to add any effects on here, like a blur. Now I'm going to use a box blur in After Effects. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and Box Blur. Now the reason I'm using box blur is because it's very fast. I'm going to use a blur radius of 5, and I think I'm going to change it to 2 iterations so that it is a little bit nicer blur, and you can see that that's a pretty high quality blur right there. That's very fast. Now, I'm going to go ahead and feather my shapes more, and I think I'm going to need to ultimately change the opacity on this layer in order to get the effect that I'd like. So I'm going to change this opacity of the layer down to about 70. Now, that still looks a little blurry to me, so I'm going to bump it down to 60. We're going to go from there, and you can see right away that that gives me some really nice results, while not losing detail on the face, but evening out skin tone and softening shadows and hard lines. Now I want to keep the age lines around her eyes because I feel like that makes her look a little older, and I think that's important for an elf. She's probably so much older than this warrior character. Let's play through and see how that looks. Now I'm really happy with the way that looks. It looks really smooth, it looks really natural, and no shapes are bouncing around. Okay, so let's zoom in here and let's talk a little bit about the next thing that we were going to do. One of the things we're going to do here is we're going to come in here and we're going to make her eyes a little more golden. Now that's because the actress requested, instead of wearing contacts, she wanted us to fix her eyes in post. Now, it's much easier to fix eyes in post than it is to fix contacts in post, because I can always just bring out detail in her eyes and change the color. So what we do is we hop back over to Mocha Pro, we make sure our project is saved as usual, and I'm going to come in here and start rotoscoping her eyeballs. I'm just going to get the whites of her eyes and her irises in just one fell swoop, so I'm just going to do the same garbage matte I've been doing, where I track and roto at the same time. So I'm going to draw an X-spline right around her eyes, I'm going to hit stabilize, and I'm going to track forward. And you'll see that Mocha will do its best to hold on, but I'm going to still need to correct that shape and keep tracking. Now that's because her eye closes, so the data changes, and Mocha doesn't understand that that animation is not the animation of the plane, because Mocha's a planar tracker. I'm going to do the same thing to the other eye, and there's going to be limitations to that, but we're going to work right around that and just sort of brute force through the rough patches. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep correcting my eye shape until it's how I want it. I'm going to do that for both eyes, the left and the right. Now you'll notice I always lock my layers when I'm done with them, so sometimes I have to unlock them to continue to roto, but that's not too much of a pain. I'd rather do that than mess myself up. Now I'm going to come in here and draw a shape around her iris, and I'm only going to track translation, scale, and rotation. I'm only tracking translation, scale, and rotation because I don't want to have this shape get too interrupted, because I want her iris to stay more or less the same size throughout the shot. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other eye. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go ahead and track, and about the time that her eye gets all messed up because she blinks, I'm going to find a different reference area to track for that shape so that I cannot get that warp going on. So in this case, I'm just going to move that little iris area to her eyebrow for a second, where I've got some layers of detail. And I'm going to track backwards from there, just one at a time. And then I'm going to go ahead and move the shape back to where it needs to be, you know, when I'm done tracking. And the spline will follow the track, and I will be able to do less work. Basically, it's a cheat. Okay, so now I'm just going to pop this right back down over her iris and do some adjustments, right? And then I'm going to go to the other keyframe that I made where I moved it up to her eyebrow, and I'm going to move it back to her iris. And now very suddenly, I don't have to worry about that blink anymore. And in fact, that worked so well, I think I'm going to go ahead and do it on the other eye. so that I end up with really nice roto shapes for the irises, because it's very important to get a character's eyes right, because that's where you're looking. Okay, so I don't want the color that I'm going to change these to be fluctuating. Okay, so I'm going to move back to her left eye here in just a second, and we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to take the iris, we're going to move it to the eyebrow, delete our old keyframes, and we are going to go ahead and just track that little small area so that we end up with less of a warp. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to save again, and we're going to export shape data back over to After Effects. Alright, so we're saved. We're going to go to shape data. We're going to copy to the clipboard, and we're going to click on the original movie, and we're going to go ahead and make sure we're on the first frame, and we are going to go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask, and you can see we have our shape right from After Effects. We're probably going to go ahead and need to pull the other eye shape out of Mocha Pro, so we're going to pop back over to Mocha Pro. We're going to click on her left iris, we're going to export shape data, copy to the clipboard, back to After Effects, Edit, Paste Mocha Mask. Again, we're always making sure we're on the first frame. Okay, let's scrub through, make sure that's sticking how it's supposed to, and it is. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to export all visible layers so that we get the eyes as well. So now we have the eyes on another layer as well. So we have the eye shapes for brightening up the eyes, and then we have the eye color that we're going to change. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some feather on this. We're going to put a 10 pixel feather on these eye shapes. And for the irises, we're going to go ahead and put a little 3 pixel feather on them. And to get the eyes to look right, we're going to screen them so that we end up with like a much brighter eye. Okay, and we're going to have to lower the opacity on that so it doesn't quite look like she's got the demon eye. So we're going to go to Transform Opacity, and we're going to knock this down to about 50%. And right away, we have much more lit eyes that look a lot more natural and a lot more full of life and a lot more kind and inviting. Alright, so actually let's change it to 40% because it's still a little too crazy for me. And now we're going to move in and start changing this eye color. So here are our irises. We're going to actually reduce the mask by 10 so that we get kind of like a soft fall off. And we're going to change the color by going to color correction and levels. And we're going to brighten her eyes up by quite a bit. Okay, just the irises though. And you'll see that we can see that fall off. You can see what's going on there really quickly. We're going to brighten all of that up. And then we're going to go to color correction again, and we're going to go to, I want to say, color balance. And we are going to click on color balance, and we are going to adjust the red color balance in the highlights, and we're going to adjust the green color balance in the midtones so that we get more of a golden color. And we are going to soft light this over the eyes and see what that gets us. And that gets us a much brighter eye. We actually could brighten this up even more, so I think we're going to go towards more effects. We're going to add a little bit more green, add a little bit more red, okay? And then we are going to go back to effects, and we are going to go to color correction, and we're going to go to brightness contrast. We're just going to go ahead and brighten these eyes up by about 20 points, make that 30, and now we have some really golden eyes where we used to have really brown eyes, okay? Really quickly, very nice effect, looks very natural. Alright, so now all we need to do is we need to mask out that iris area. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a black solid. We're going to call this the alpha for the eye, basically the iris. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to paste the eye shapes that we had made before onto that, that track mat that we just made. Okay, and we end up with a really creepy demon eye kind of thing going on. We're going to go ahead and use this as a track mat. We're going to go to a Luma mat inverted. Okay, and now the irises are going to be trimmed into the eye area according to the roto shape that we made before. Now that still leaves a little bit of a brightness on her eyelashes, and that's not going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to move into the iris area, and we are going to animate the opacity transform on this so that we get some fall off, okay, for her glowing eyes. So we're just going to animate a little fall off from 0 to 100%. And I feel like actually the yellow that we've made her eyes is a little too yellow, so I think we're going to knock that back to about 75%. Okay? And then we're going to see how that looks. Now, she's already got a much, much, much brighter set of eyes from just that little bit. We're going to make sure we save our After Effects project, because I can't believe we haven't saved until now. And it's very important to save often and in versions. It doesn't matter if you're using super stable software or not. All computers act up from time to time. Alright, so we're going to save this as version 1. And now we're going to make some real magic happen. We're going to go ahead and make my little Canon 5D Mark II look like a much nicer camera. We're going to use Neat Image to reduce the noise. So this is how that works. Basically, we go into Options, and we draw a little area around a spot of fairly uniform grain, and we auto-profile that. Now, it's a small area, so it's going to warn me that it might not be good enough. But I'm actually really happy with those results. But I tell you, we have discovered something in our degrain. We have discovered that there's actually some hot pixels on my sensor. We're going to fix those later, but for right now, we're going to go ahead and finish this look. We're going to go to Magic Bullet Mojo, and we're going to adjust the colors to be much more Hobbity, Lord of the Ringsy, okay? And we're going to do that just very, very quickly by warming it, increasing the mojo, and sort of adjusting the overall look. So that was what we started with originally, and this is what we have now, just by doing a couple of quick adjustments in After Effects and Mocha Pro. So I'm pretty impressed with that. Now, the last thing we need to do to finish this shot and to make sure everything looks good is we need to go ahead and make any adjustments we were going to make, and then we're going to come in here and save, and we're going to fix these hot pixels. So to fix these hot pixels, I just very quickly draw a little garbage mat around them, and I'm going to have to set it to none so I can draw the second part of that garbage mat. We're just drawing that on our clean plate layer that we made. Okay, and then all we're going to do is we're going to adjust the feather and adjust the size around these hot pixels, and then we're going to do the laziest cheat ever. We're going to subtract that area from the clean plate, and we're going to click on a duplicated background layer, and we're just going to nudge that background layer down and left until we cannot see that that dot anymore. We're just going to replace it with similar areaed pixels. So I'm pretty happy with that. I feel like that solves the problem. So we're going to go ahead and adjust our settings, and then we're going to turn our adjustment layer back on, and we should be good to go. So that is, from start to finish, how I look-dev'd this shot to turn a daylight shot into a Lord of the Rings style fantasy shoot. Now this is using mainly Mocha Pro and After Effects. I am Mary Poplin with Imagineer Systems. If you want to contact us, we have a forum. We are also on Facebook. We have a Twitter if you like tweeting. And we have a contact form if you have any questions. The plugins I used are Neat Image and Magic Bullet Mojo.